So I want you to imagine something for a second.
Okay.
Imagine discovering that the entire foundation of Western civilization,
Yeah.
I mean, the biography, the core teachings, even the actual name of its most central historical figure was just like the result of a 2,000-year-old PR scrub.
Right, a massive historical edit.
Exactly. That the texts we've just blindly accepted as, historical bedrock were systematically rewritten. And they ended up burying this profoundly revolutionary, like fiercely independent philosophy under centuries of institutional dogma.
It is a massive thing to wrap your head around, yeah.
It is. So today on the Deep Dive, we are not looking at the traditional narrative. We are diving into a historical recalibration centered around a man who, according to the sources we're unpacking today, was actually named Immanuel.
Yeah, and it's a really profound shift in perspective. I mean, when you step into the world of ancient translations and translations of translations and texts preserved outside of canonical approval, the whole historical landscape just becomes incredibly complex. So for this deep dive, we're pulling from a really fascinating, highly debated stack of source material.
Right, we got a lot to get through today.
We do. We're looking closely at texts like the Talmud of Jmmanuel and the detailed contact reports documented by Billy Meier.
Especially focusing on the teachings from Semjase.
Exactly, focusing on the philosophical teachings delivered by Semjase. And we're also bringing in comprehensive scholarly analyses, like Edward Deardorff's book, Celestial Teachings.
Right, and the mission of this deep dive, our whole goal today is to really carefully unpack the immense historical and philosophical pivot that's contained within those sources.
It's a huge pivot.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are tracking a paradigm shift from external religious worship, the traditional concept of just looking up at the sky for a savior to come and rescue humanity, to a highly demanding framework of radical internal self-responsibility.
Which is completely different.
Radically different. And for you listening right now, whether you consider yourself, a student of history or someone fascinated by ancient mysteries or just someone interested in how human consciousness actually works, this exploration matters.
It matters a lot because the texts we're analyzing, they basically offer a comprehensive mechanical blueprint for understanding the universe and your own mind.
Yeah.
And it operates completely outside of traditional dogmatic structures. But just to be perfectly clear right off the top here, our role is to impartially report and explore the architecture of these ideas.
Right. We aren't taking a side.
Exactly. We are not taking a religious or political stance. We are just opening the books and examining the profound claims inside them.
Just reporting what's there. So let's jump straight into the most immediate and honestly jarring revelation presented in these sources. It's just a basic issue of historical identity.
The name itself.
Yes. The figure universally known to the modern world is completely reframed here. The sources assert that his actual given name was Immanuel.
And it's not just like a nickname.
No, this isn't positioned as a mere alternate title. The texts point directly back to the prophecy in the book of Isaiah, chapter 7, verse 14, which explicitly states, "The virgin shall conceive and give birth to a son, and shall name him Immanuel."
Right, and the distinction in that name is not just, a footnote for linguists or historians to argue about. It actually carries the entire weight of his mission, which has been historically obscured.
How so?
Well, if we look deeply into the source material, particularly a text referenced as Ascot's Explanations, Immanuel is recorded as being incredibly lucid about his purpose.
Like he knew exactly what he was doing.
Exactly. And, crucially, he was just as clear about what his purpose was not. He explicitly stated that he was not a religious faith-bringer.
Which, that completely upends the conventional historical understanding of him as the founder of a massive global religion.
It flips it on its head.
Right. Because if he wasn't trying to build a faith structure to, secure his own legacy, what was the actual end goal of his education and his travels? Like, what was he actually trying to teach people?
According to these texts, he functioned as a spiritual revolutionary.
A revolutionary.
Yeah. His goal was not to construct some hierarchical system where followers, bowed down to him or sacrificed to an external deity. His objective was true, mechanical freedom.
Mechanical freedom.
Yes. Enlightening humanity about what the texts call the true teaching of the Spirit. And you have to understand, this philosophical framework was inherently dangerous back then.
Because it threatened the people in charge.
Exactly, because he was pushing back so fiercely against the rulers, the scribes, the religious authorities of his time, his life was under constant threat.
Right. He was directly disrupting the established power structures, and those structures relied entirely on keeping the general population dependent on the intermediary of religious authority, right?
Precisely. They needed that dependency to maintain control.
And what I found so compelling in these sources is that this disruption goes all the way down to a socioeconomic background.
Oh, yeah. The whole narrative is different.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all grown up with the exact same narrative, the humble, poor carpenter from a marginalized village. But these texts argue that this narrative is a complete fabrication designed to serve a later theological agenda.
It's a total recalibration of the historical and economic context.
Let's get into that because it's fascinating.
So according to the texts we're examining, his foster father, Joseph, wasn't just, a solitary laborer eking out a meager existence with a hammer and a saw.
Right.
Joseph was an independent business owner. He ran an established carpentry business, employing various workers to fulfill larger orders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and Joseph had actually learned this trade from his own father, who had built a successful ship carpentry business.
Wait, ship carpentry?
Yes.
So we are talking about a family of established independent contractors. Like entrepreneurs operating in a highly trade-driven ancient economy.
Exactly. The sources explicitly state that the family was quite prosperous.
Prosperous enough that Immanuel and his twin brother Jacob,
Right, the twin brother.
and his stepsister Mary Magdalene all received formal education. They all learned to read and write.
Which is huge.
Right. In that specific historical era, literacy was a massive indicator of status, wealth, and access to resources.
It really was. And that literacy changes the entire lens through which we have to view his life and his intellectual formation.
Because he wasn't just some guy.
No. Immanuel was highly educated, intellectually autonomous, and an expert in analyzing written texts. He didn't just, wander out of the desert one day possessed by inexplicable supernatural knowledge.
Right.
He earned his living actively spreading these spirit teachings. He operated almost like a traveling philosopher or lecturer.
Oh, like a modern-day speaker on tour.
Kind of, yeah. He even received monetary donations from those who valued his teachings, which he had one of his trusted disciples manage for him.
Okay, wait. I want to pause on this for a second because it feels like a really specific detail for the sources to emphasize.
It is very specific.
So for you listening, it's like finding out a famous historical icon's PR team entirely scrubbed their background. But why does this socioeconomic detail actually matter to the core philosophy?
That's a great question.
I mean, even if he had been a billionaire shipbuilder, a teaching like love your neighbor is still just love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Does him being a prosperous, literate business owner fundamentally change the spiritual math of what he was saying?
It actually changes the entire foundation of how the teachings are received.
How so?
Because by systematically scrubbing his education, his literacy, and his family's prosperity from the historical record, later institutions were able to manufacture a narrative of a supernatural, untouchable aura.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Think about it. If he's presented as a completely uneducated, impoverished carpenter who suddenly begins speaking profound, world-altering, universal truths, it frames him as an inexplicable, magical figure.
Right. It makes him seem divine just by default.
Exactly. He becomes a deity who must be worshipped simply because his knowledge is perceived as supernatural in origin. There's no other explanation for it. But if you restore the historical reality that he was an educated, highly conscious human being from a prosperous family who could read, write, and deliberately study the natural laws, it grounds him in reality.
It transforms him from a magical entity to, like, a master philosopher, a teacher who did the homework.
Precisely. It frames him not as an incomprehensible god demanding blind worship, but as a human who mastered a distinct, incredibly advanced philosophy. And his primary goal was to teach other humans how to master it themselves.
Which shifts the dynamic entirely.
Completely. It moves away from the command to worship me because I am magic, and replaces it with the invitation to listen to me because I have studied the fundamental laws of the universe and you have the exact same capacity to learn them.
That is a massive difference. And that distinction perfectly sets up the next major piece of this deep dive. Because if his overarching goal wasn't to be worshipped, what exactly was the curriculum?
Right. What was the actual lesson plan?
Exactly. What was he actually teaching the people who came to hear him? This brings us to what the sources refer to as the highest law of creation. Yes. And to understand this, the side-by-side comparison in Edward Deardorff's book, Celestial Teachings, is absolutely vital. Deardorff takes the traditional canonical book of Matthew and places it right next to the corresponding verses in the Talmud of Immanuel.
And the friction between the two texts is absolutely stunning.
It really is.
The contrast there is like a masterclass in how subtle edits completely alter a civilization's trajectory.
Totally.
In the canonical book of Matthew, you have this famously pivotal scene where Immanuel is tested by the authorities, and they ask him to name the greatest commandment in the law.
Right, a classic Sunday school story.
Right. And the traditional answer, the one woven into the fabric of Western religion, is the command to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind.
Right.
But when you look at that exact same exchange in the Talmud of Immanuel, the dialogue is radically different and honestly far more confrontational.
Oh, yeah. The pushback from Immanuel in the Talmud is immediate. When he's asked about the greatest commandment, he basically challenges the fundamental premise of the question itself.
He really does.
He responds by asking them, whose law are you talking about? The law of the emperor, the law of God, or the law of creation?
And that specific counter-question is the pivot point of his entire philosophy.
Because he's categorizing them.
Exactly. He is drawing a hard, unyielding line between man-made or conceptualized authority, whether that's a Roman emperor or a localized anthropomorphic god, and the fundamental mechanical reality of the universe, which he explicitly calls creation.
And his actual answer to their question is incredibly sharp. Let me read it. He states, the highest commandment in the law of creation is, achieve the wisdom of knowledge, so that you may wisely follow the laws of creation.
Achieve the wisdom of knowledge. I mean, it is vital to recognize what is completely absent from that statement.
Yeah, there is zero mention of worship anywhere in there.
Not at all.
No demand to bow down, no fear of divine wrath, no requirement for unquestioning devotion.
It's a complete paradigm shift. The sources go to great lengths to explain that gods and emperors are fundamentally temporal.
Meaning
There's a deeply illuminating poem referenced in the sources by Dayat Maroth called Spirit Speaks, which touches on this exact dynamic.
Oh, I loved that part.
It's beautiful. It suggests that the sky gods that humanity has historically revered, the entities who maybe came from the stars or held advanced technology, are merely children of creation themselves.
They aren't the ultimate source.
Right. They might be older, they might possess advanced knowledge to guide early humans, but they are absolutely not the ultimate source of existence. They are subject to the exact same universal laws as we are. Creation itself, however, is eternal.
So translate this for the listener right now. What does this mean for human application?
It means that according to Immanuel's actual teachings, the highest moral duty of a human being is not the blind, passive worship of a deity. The ultimate goal is the conscious, relentless, active pursuit of knowledge.
And if we contextualize this within the broader historical and political landscape back then, it becomes glaringly obvious why institutional powers would want to bury this specific text and alter the translation.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, a population that is indoctrinated to believe its highest moral imperative is to blindly worship an external, unquestionable authority that is a population that is incredibly easy to control.
Easy to control, easy to tax, easy to send to war.
Exactly. But a population that believes its highest moral duty is to seek wisdom, interrogate reality, ask hard questions, and understand the immutable laws of the universe for themselves, the population is fundamentally ungovernable by tyrants.
That's exactly it.
It's as if humanity was handed the ultimate intricate instruction manual for how the universe operates. And instead of opening it, reading it, and doing the hard work to understand the physics of how the machine actually works,
We just put it on an altar.
yeah, we just built a giant gold-plated shrine to the physical manual itself and spent 2,000 years bowing to it.
And just like a Wi-Fi router, if you don't know the password, if you don't actively achieve the wisdom of knowledge, you cannot access the network, even though the creational signal is passing right through you.
We venerate the cover of the book instead of applying its physics.
Exactly. Immanuel was desperately trying to teach the physics. But to truly grasp the physics he was teaching, we have to look closely at the terminology.
Yeah, the definitions matter here.
They really do. What do these sources actually mean when they use the word creation? Because the definition provided in these texts is vastly different from the traditional concept of an old man with a beard sitting on a throne in the clouds.
Oh, vastly different. Let's get into the actual mechanics of creation.
Okay, let's do it.
So the sources, particularly the detailed breakdown in Contact Report 018 and the 10th Contact with 70 essay, go into incredible, almost overwhelming depth defining what creation is. And the first thing they establish is what it is not.
Which is key.
Yeah. Creation is explicitly not a person. It is not an anthropomorphic entity keeping a judgmental tally of your daily sins.
No, the text describes creation as unending beauty, infinite joy, the pure essence of wisdom, truth, and logic.
It sounds so much bigger than a person.
It is. It is the absolute highest principle of existence, the universal consciousness that pervades all things. The sources are highly critical of traditional religious terminology.
Yeah, they really don't hold back.
They don't. They state that the word God is an unreal, manufactured religious name that heavily misleads humanity.
Why does it mislead us, according to the text?
It misleads because it anthropomorphizes the infinite. It shrinks the boundless mechanical perfection of the universe down into a human-like personality burdened with petty human flaws like jealousy, wrath, and a demand for constant validation.
And the sources explain that when the human spirit enters the physical world, we become dominated by what they call the ego.
Right, the ego.
And the ego is described essentially as a localized survival mechanism
Right.
that, if left unchecked, becomes completely obsessed with fear, control, titles, and material possessions.
We get entirely caught up in the maintenance of our physical shells.
We really do. The text actually calls out human arrogance directly, noting that with an inflated chest, the human calls himself the crown of creation.
The crown of creation. Right.
And yet we systematically destroy the natural world with our flawed human sciences while remaining completely ignorant of the eternal natural laws that actually govern us.
This profound critique raises a critical point about how we perceive our own reality. I mean, the ego desperately wants to control its environment because it fundamentally feels separate from it.
It feels isolated.
Yes, it views the universe as hostile. But the spiritual teachings of Immanuel, deeply expanded upon by the explanations from Semjazi, demand a massive psychological inversion.
A total flip.
Exactly. They argue that concepts like heaven, hell, and happiness are not geographical locations you travel to after your biological body dies. They're entirely inner, self-created states of being.
Happiness is a self-created state, but happiness is never a place. That line from the 10th Contact is incredibly arresting because it strips away all the escapism.
It forces the locus of responsibility entirely back onto the individual consciousness. There is no escaping to somewhere else.
Wow.
Furthermore, the texts attempt to shatter the ego's limited, earth-centric perspective by describing the true scale of the cosmos.
Oh, this part blew my mind.
Right. They state that the physical universe we can currently perceive with our telescopes is just a tiny iota.
An iota?
Just a speck. It is merely one single room among myriads of universes. There are universes within universes, dimensions above and below our own.
And what's the point of telling us that? Just to make us feel small.
Actually, yes, in a way. The sheer unfathomable scale is deliberately meant to crush the ego's delusion of self-importance and separateness.
And the ultimate philosophical point these sources make regarding the ego comes down to the concept of identification. Like, who, fundamentally, do you think you are?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. If you identify exclusively with your physical body, the car you drive, the balance in your bank account, or your societal job title, you are basically guaranteeing a life of constant, agonizing fear.
Because every single one of those things is finite.
Exactly. By the law of physics, they will eventually degrade, be lost, or be taken away.
Yes. The text observes that we constantly surround our physical bodies with vanity, fear, and anxieties. We mourn inconsolably when our finite possessions perish because we believe a part of ourselves has died with them.
Right.
But Immanuel's teaching provides a radical alternative. If you realize through the achievement of wisdom that you are actually a living fragment of creation, that the eternal spirit resides physically within you, then you cease identifying solely with your temporary physical shell.
You expand.
Yes, you begin a process of identifying with everything.
And this is where the philosophy becomes incredibly practical for you listening.
But
If you genuinely identify with the entire universe, concepts like hate and greed become logically impossible.
it just don't make sense anymore.
They become absurd. You can't hoard resources against yourself. You can't harbor hatred for your neighbor because, on a mechanical, spiritual level, your neighbor is animated by the exact same creational source energy that animates you.
Exactly.
To hate them is to hate a fractal of yourself.
That is the ultimate mystical consciousness the texts describe. It is the perception of the one unified reality manifesting in all things.
It's a beautiful way way to look at the world.
It really is. When you view a fellow human being through this lens, you stop seeing just their material, societal form, a man, a woman, a child, an enemy, a friend, and you start seeing them primarily as the bearer of a creational spirit.
And that realization, when truly integrated, it instantly dissolves the artificial boundaries and hostilities that the ego fights so desperately to maintain.
It takes the power away from the ego entirely.
Okay, so we keep circling around this word spirit, and I want to get incredibly literal here, because what I found most fascinating about these source texts is that they do not just speak in vague poetic metaphors about the soul.
No, not at all.
They break down the literal anatomical mechanics of the spirit. They treat it like a tangible, measurable energy source.
It is highly specific and technical. The texts refer to the spirit as the energy, which translates to a primordial, foundational energy, a literal, energetic fragment of creation itself.
A fragment of creation.
Yes, and they precisely pinpoint its location within the human anatomy.
Wait, like a physical location in the body?
Yes. It doesn't just float ethereally around your aura. It resides specifically within a structure in the brain called the superior colliculus.
Okay, wait, the superior colliculus, that's a highly specific part of the midbrain. Biologically speaking, why there? Does the text explain the connection?
It makes a profound kind of sense when you look at the biology. The superior colliculus is a paired structure in the mammalian midbrain that is primarily responsible for processing visual and auditory reflexes.
So it processes sight and sound.
Right, but more than that, it literally directs where we focus our eyes and orient our head in response to environmental stimuli. It is the biological center of physical orientation. Philosophically, the texts suggest this is exactly where the energy docks, because the spirit's function is to orient the human consciousness toward truth and creational alignment. It is the literal intersection of physical perception and spiritual awareness.
That is mind-blowing. The biological center of orientation houses the spiritual center of orientation.
Exactly.
And the texts describe the physical dimensions of this spirit energy, right? They say it is the size of a needlepoint.
It's just a tiny pinprick.
But despite its microscopic footprint, it possesses immense, unimaginably dense energy. It spreads out from that needlepoint in the superior colliculus like a delicate filigree web, enlivening and powering every single cell in the human body without losing a single iota of its creational power.
It's a remarkable, elegant image. The spirit is not a biological organ that can be cut out on an operating table. It is an energy concentration created directly by creation itself, placed in a vessel to experience and evolve to a higher level of wisdom.
Right.
And there are very strict, unbending mechanics to how it operates, particularly during the transition of biological death.
This part was wild.
The texts note that this specific spirit energy stays in the body for exactly 3 hours after the central spirit form has consciously left the physical shell.
Which is an incredible detail.
Yeah.
Because it aligns almost perfectly with the biological window utilized in modern medicine for viable organ donation.
Yes, it does.
Like the residual creational energy keeps the cellular structure viable just long enough before total biological decay begins.
Exactly. The physical laws map perfectly onto the spiritual laws.
Right.
But perhaps the most rigid mechanical rule outlined in these texts pertains to the concept of reincarnation, or what the specific teachings refer to as transformation.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about transformation.
The sources are absolute on this point. A human spirit form only incarnates into what they classify as an Amadam life form.
Amadam.
Yes, Amadam simply means human life form.
Which answers a massive question for anyone who has studied Eastern philosophies. According to Immanuel and Semjose, there is no coming back as a golden retriever, a bird, or an oak tree.
Right. It comes down to a strict issue of hardware and software compatibility.
I love that analogy.
A human spirit, the software, has evolved over eons to reach a level of creational frequency that explicitly requires a highly complex, sufficiently developed biological vessel, the hardware, to process its ongoing evolution.
So an animal just doesn't have the hardware.
Right. An animal brain physically lacks the neural architecture and the specific biological docking points, like a compatible superior colliculus, to house a human-level spirit. A human spirit never devolves to reincarnate as an animal or a plant. The evolutionary paths are distinctly parallel, not intersecting.
And the texts even offer this fascinating sci-fi hypothetical to prove the rule, don't they?
Oh, yeah, the space traveler example.
Yeah. They state that if a space traveler from a highly advanced human race dies while on a deep space expedition and their spirit form wanders off to find a new host planet, it will explicitly incarnate into a human life form on that new planet.
Provided the evolutionary levels of the local human population are compatible, yes.
It brings us right back to that metaphor of the microscopic Wi-Fi router. The spirit is the size of a pinprick, generating the massive signal that powers the entire smart home of the human body.
Right.
And when the physical hardware inevitably degrades and breaks, that eternal signal doesn't downgrade to a simpler machine. It seeks out a new, perfectly compatible router to boot up in and continue its processing.
Exactly. And the time frame for this continuous processing is just staggering.
It is nuts.
The sources state that this evolutionary cycle of continuous transformation, living, dying, and learning lasts for roughly 420 billion years.
420 billion years.
420 billion years. To put that in perspective, our current understanding of the physical universe places its age at roughly 13.8 billion years.
Right.
The evolutionary cycle of a single human spirit, according to these texts, spans a timeline dozens of times longer than the current age of our entire known universe.
Throw up your head around that.
And at the end of that unimaginable expanse of time and learning, the spirit doesn't just stop. It finally achieves ultimate wisdom and merges back into the universal Empfindungs consciousness, the ultimate unified creational awareness,
The drop of water finally returns to the eternal ocean.
carrying all its gathered wisdom with it.
That number, 420 billion years, is almost impossible for the human ego to comprehend. But if we connect this massive sweeping timeline directly back to Immanuel's teachings on the ground, it totally shifts how you experience the friction of your daily life.
It shrinks your problems, definitely.
Right. When you deeply, profoundly realize that your spirit is literally ageless, that it is currently enrolled in a 420 billion year learning curve, the daily human anxieties that paralyze us begin to lose their grip.
The anxieties lose their power because they lose their ultimate permanence. Aging, grief, temporary failures, societal rejections, they are placed into a cosmic mechanical perspective.
The texts, quote, the Proverbs of Wisdom, a text which Immanuel extensively studied and taught from, saying, fools cry over things that are not worth crying over, and thereby they increase their grief, privation, and misery.
Right.
Think about that in the context of 420 billion years. If your consciousness is going to exist and evolve for eons, failing that college math test, or getting passed over for that corporate promotion, or even just the biological process of getting old,
It's less than a blink of a cosmic eye.
it is entirely insignificant in the grand scope of your spirit's journey.
Which is not to say that you become an unfeeling robot,
Right. You still have to live life.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you don't experience the genuine human emotion of sadness or disappointment, but it means you do not allow that localized emotion to destroy your core peace.
You observe it.
You observe the emotion without becoming enslaved by it. The spirit itself remains forever young. It never succumbs to the biological symptoms of old age.
Because it's energy.
Right. As the 10th contact explicitly states, if the human recognizes the existence of his spirit, then old age can do nothing to him anymore. The physical body wrinkles, but the core awareness remains pristine.
And this brings us to what I think is the absolute most demanding and frankly intimidating part of this entire deep dive.
Here we go.
Because if you have 420 billion years to figure things out, and we've established that there is no external judging God keeping score or intervening to save you, then who is actually steering this ship?
You are.
Yeah.
And only you. That is the absolute unyielding core of Immanuel's philosophy. Creation, in its infinite wisdom and its mechanical laws, do not dictate your daily actions.
Right.
They do not intervene to stop you from making disastrous mistakes. They do not shield you from pain. And they certainly do not orchestrate a predestined life plan for you. They only regulate the universal law of cause and effect.
Meaning you have absolute terrifying free will.
Clarifying free will.
The sources state this so clearly and so repeatedly. Reality is not happening to you. Reality is being projected from you.
Right.
The practice of outsourcing your negative emotions or your life failures to your past trauma, to how your parents raised you, to society, or to an external God who is supposedly testing your faith. The sources say all of that is a complete illusion generated by the ego to avoid taking responsibility.
It is the absolute end of blame.
The end of blame.
If you care for your thoughts, if you act on your inner motivations, you alone bear the total responsibility for the outcome. The creational laws simply dictate that from a distinct, measurable cause, a corresponding resulting effect arises.
It's literally just cause and effect.
It is physics applied to consciousness.
Hmm.
If you place your hand into a roaring fire, your flesh gets burned. The fire didn't judge your character. The fire isn't punishing you for being a bad person. The fire simply operated perfectly on the natural law of cause and effect.
Look, I have to be completely honest here. When I was reading through this section of the sources, I felt a deep sense of friction.
I think we all do.
Because this sounds incredibly empowering on an intellectual level, but on an emotional level, it is utterly terrifying.
Because there's no safety net.
Right. There is absolutely no cosmic safety net. If I completely mess up my life, if I hurt someone, if I make a massive error in judgment, I can't just fall to my knees, pray to a deity, and ask them to magically fix the consequences or wipe the slate clean through divine forgiveness.
No, you can't.
I have to personally eat every single consequence of my actions.
And that terror you felt is exactly why traditional forgiveness-based religions became so massively popular and easily co-opted.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
I completely understand why that level of absolute accountability feels daunting. The human ego desperately wants to be rescued. It craves a benevolent parent figure in the sky who will step in, clean up its messes, and tell it everything is going to be okay.
It's comforting.
It is. But let's look at how the text fundamentally reframes this terror. Yes, this philosophy is the end of being magically rescued. But as one of our sources profoundly notes, self-responsibility is self-liberation.
Self-responsibility is self-liberation. I love that.
Exactly. When you finally stop waiting on the runway to be saved by an external force, you reclaim the absolute authority to transmute your own painful experiences into actual wisdom. You step permanently out of the role of the victim.
You take the reins.
It's about learning to respond consciously to the reality in front of you, rather than reacting automatically based on your ego's fear and your past conditioning. It means having the radical honesty to say, I created this negative thought. I gave this destructive emotion permission to occupy my mind. I'm the cause, and therefore right now I have the power to choose differently.
And that massive shift in mindset from passive victim to active creator is perfectly illustrated when you do another textual comparison.
The prayers.
Yes, the prayers. Look at the traditional Christian Lord's Prayer, the most famous prayer in the world, and compare it to the original version found in these sources, which is referred to as Immanuel's prayer to the Spirit, or the prayer to creation.
The juxtaposition of these two prayers is perhaps the most perfect distillation of the shift from external dependency to internal responsibility that we've discussed today.
Let's break it down. In the traditional canonized prayer, you are fundamentally adopting the posture of a dependent child, asking an external father figure for literal material sustenance. Give us this day our daily bread.
Right. You are asking the universe to feed you.
But Immanuel's actual prayer, as recorded in the Talmud of Jmmanuel, asks for something entirely different and far more demanding. It says, give me today my daily bread so that I may recognize my errors and the truth.
It is entirely an inward plea. The bread being requested is not physical food to keep the biological shell alive. It is spiritual clarity.
It's understanding.
Yes. It is the energetic nourishment required to unflinchingly examine your own flaws, recognize where you have violated the law of cause and effect, and correct your own trajectory.
It is an acknowledgement that the power to change is already internal.
Exactly. It reflects Immanuel's teaching that the kingdom of heaven is not an exclusive gated community up in the clouds. It is a state of consciousness, acknowledging that your kingdom exists within me.
Your kingdom exists within me. The prayer continues, do not let me fall into temptation or confusion, but deliver me from error. For you are within me, and the power and the knowledge forever and ever.
It is not a plea for a God to strike down your enemies.
No, it's a daily, rigorous commitment to self-awareness. It's the psychological act of reminding yourself that the needlepoint of creational energy resides inside your own superior colliculus, giving you all the internal tools necessary to navigate the universe.
And that takes us full circle right back to the central, unyielding message of Immanuel's actual historical life. Achieve the wisdom of knowledge.
Achieve the wisdom of knowledge.
Do not waste your brief physical existence looking at the sky for a savior to do the work for you. Become the master of your own spirit. Recognize that you are an integral, immortal, incredibly powerful fragment of the universe experiencing itself, and take total responsibility for that power.
This has been an incredibly dense, paradigm-shifting journey today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. I mean, we started by wiping 2,000 years of institutional mud off the historical record to uncover the true face of Immanuel.
Not a magical, uneducated carpenter demanding subservient worship.
Right, but a highly educated, fiercely independent revolutionary who risked his life to teach the mechanical physics of the universe. We explored the massive cultural pivot of swapping blind religious obedience for the active, difficult pursuit of creational wisdom.
We delved deeply into the literal biological mechanics of the spirit.
The superior calculus.
Yes, that unimaginably dense needlepoint of your energy docking in your midbrain, constantly connecting you to the infinite beauty, logic, and unending scale of creation.
And finally, we confronted the liberating, if initially terrifying, reality of absolute self-responsibility, contextualized across a staggering 420 billion year evolutionary lifespan.
It's a lot to process.
It is. And as we always strive to do on this show, we want to bring all of this vast cosmic theory right back down to Earth, directly to you, listening right now.
Because if this material remains just abstract ancient theology to you, then we have missed the point of Immanuel's teachings entirely.
Completely.
This is designed to be a highly practical, minute-to-minute framework for your daily life. Tomorrow morning, when an inevitable frustration arises, maybe someone recklessly cuts you off in traffic or a massive project at work suddenly falls apart, you are going to face a choice.
You always have a choice.
You can allow your ego to react automatically with fear, anger, and blame, adopting the victim mentality and acting as if the world is maliciously happening to you.
Or you can pause.
Or you can pause. You can access that internal power and remember the unbending law of cause and effect.
Right.
You can consciously choose your response, recognizing that your internal peace of mind is entirely self-created.
Right. You absolutely do not have to outsource your emotional state to a bad driver or a stressed boss.
Exactly. You are the sole architect of your internal reality.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply provocative thought for you to mull over, building off the massive cosmological scope of the text we explored today. If these ancient sources are right, and your spirit is currently enrolled in a 420 billion year journey of continuous evolution and transformation, how does that radically reframe the biggest mistake you made this week?
That is the ultimate perspective shift. It changes everything.
It really does. Because if you begin to view your current 80 or so year biological life as just one split second in a massive cosmic school year, maybe that recent failure wasn't a final damning judgment on your character at all. Maybe it wasn't a world-ending disaster that permanently defines who you are. Maybe, in the grand mechanics of cause and effect, it was just the exact, highly specific piece of homework you needed to finally learn the lesson, correct your trajectory, and move your consciousness forward.
Just a stepping stone.
Exactly. Think about that massive 420 billion year timeline the next time your ego tempts you to be mercilessly hard on yourself.